She was 74 years old. Kneeling on a small prayer rug. Right in the middle of a busy international airport. Hundreds of people rushing past her. Rolling suitcases. Loud announcements. Children crying. But she heard none of it. Her forehead was on the ground. Her hands were open beside her face. And in that moment, she was somewhere else entirely. A journalist named David walked up to her. Microphone in hand. Camera rolling. He had done this before, approached people in public spaces, asked them uncomfortable questions, captured their reactions. It was his job. But this time, something made him hesitate for just a moment. Maybe it was the stillness around her. Maybe it was the way the morning light came through the terminal windows and fell directly on her small green prayer rug. He waited until she finished. She rose slowly. Adjusted her dark blue hijab. And then she looked up at him, with eyes that had seen 74 years of this world. David raised his microphone and asked, "Excuse me, at your age, why do you still do this?" She looked at him. And smiled. What she said next, no one in that terminal expected. Her name was Fatima. And she had been praying since she was 7 years old. That was 67 years ago. In a small village, in a home with clay walls and a wooden door that creaked every morning when her mother opened it for far prayer. Back then, Fatima didn't fully understand what prayer meant. She would follow her mother, copy her movements, whisper the words she had memorized. But she remembers one morning, she was perhaps 9 years old, when something shifted. She was in sujud. Forehead on the cool floor. And she felt, for the first time, that she was not alone. That something vast and warm and completely beyond her understanding was listening. She never forgot that morning. Not when she grew up and moved to a new country. Not when she buried her husband 20 years ago. Not when her knees began to ache and her back no longer bent the way it used to. 5 times every day, for 67 years, through grief and joy, through illness and health, through the long lonely nights that come with old age, Fatima prayed. She had raised 4 children in this country. Attended their graduations. Held their babies. Watched the world change around her with a speed that sometimes left her breathless. But 5 times a day, she stopped. She unrolled her small green prayer rug. And she returned to that place she had first discovered as a 9-year-old girl on a cool floor in a village far away. That particular morning, Fatima was traveling alone. Her daughter had offered to come with her. "Mama, you shouldn't travel by yourself at your age." But Fatima had simply smiled and said, "I have never traveled alone in my life. Allah has always been with me." Her flight was at 11. She arrived at the airport at 8, the way she always did, early, unhurried. She found her gate, sat down, and watched the world move around her. Business travelers with laptops open. Young couples arguing quietly over gate numbers. A child running between seats while his exhausted father called after him. At 9:15, she felt it. The quiet internal pull that Muslims who pray recognize instantly, the time for duha, the voluntary morning prayer, was here. She looked around the terminal. There was a small corner near the window, away from the heaviest foot traffic. The morning sun was coming in at a perfect angle. She reached into her carry-on bag and pulled out her small green prayer rug, the same one she had carried for 30 years, its edges slightly frayed, its color faded in the center where her forehead had touched it thousands of times. She found her direction. She unrolled her rug. She removed her shoes. And in the middle of one of the busiest airports in America, Fatima began to pray. Some people stared. Some looked away quickly, embarrassed. A few slowed their pace for just a moment, watching. And David, with his camera and his microphone and his sharp journalist's instincts, noticed her from across the terminal. David Chen had been a journalist for 14 years. He had interviewed senators and CEOs, survivors of disasters and winners of championships. He knew how to approach people. He knew how to make them talk. But as he walked toward this elderly woman, he felt something unfamiliar. A hesitation. He told this story later in an interview, and he was very specific about that moment. "I almost didn't go over. Something about the way she was praying made me feel like I was about to interrupt something important. And I wasn't sure I had the right to do that. But he was a journalist. This was his job. He waited. She completed her prayer with a final quiet greeting, turning her face to the right, then to the left. Then she sat still for a moment, hands open in her lap, lips moving silently. Then she began to fold her prayer rug with the careful, practiced movements of someone who has done this 10,000 times. David stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said. She looked up. Her eyes were calm. Not suspicious, not defensive, just calm. As if she had been expecting someone. "I'm a journalist," he said. "Would you mind if I asked you a question?" She nodded slowly. "Of course," she said. Her English was clear, slightly accented, warm. David raised his microphone. And then he asked the question that he had been shaping in his mind as he walked across the terminal, the question that he thought was provocative, challenging, perhaps even slightly confrontational. "At your age," he said, "why do you still do this?" Fatima looked at him for a moment. Not with offense. Not with the exhaustion of someone who has been asked this question too many times by people who didn't really want to know the answer. She looked at him as if she was deciding something, not whether to answer, but how much of the truth he was ready to hear. Then she said, "Young man. You are asking me why I still pray at my age. Let me ask you something first. When you love someone, truly love them, does that love become less important as you get older? Or does it become more important?" David blinked. More important, I suppose," he said. "Then you have answered your own question," Fatima said simply. "I pray because I love Allah. And the older I get, the closer I feel to meeting Him. So why would I pray less? These may be my last prayers. Or they may not. But each one feels more precious than the one before. When I was young, I prayed because I was taught to. Now I pray because I cannot imagine a single day of my life without this conversation." She paused. Then she added, quietly, "You asked why I still do this at my age. But perhaps the better question is, what have you replaced it with? Because every human heart is looking for the same thing I find on this small rug. Peace. The feeling that you are known. That you are not alone. I found mine 74 years ago. I have never needed to look anywhere else." David lowered his microphone slowly. The camera was still rolling. He didn't say anything for several seconds. Around them, the airport continued its noise and rush. But in that small space between an old woman and a journalist, there was a silence that neither of them wanted to break. They were not alone. They had never been alone. A few feet away, a woman named Margaret had stopped walking. She was 68 years old, a retired schoolteacher from Ohio, traveling to visit her grandchildren. She had been raised Catholic, had drifted away from her faith in her 40s, and had spent the last 20 years in a quiet, comfortable spiritual emptiness that she rarely examined too closely. She heard Fatima's words. All of them. And something in her chest moved. Near the gate, a young man named Tariq, 26 years old, born Muslim, hadn't prayed in 3 years, had his earphones in but had pulled one out when he noticed the crowd forming. He heard his grandmother's language in Fatima's voice. He heard something he had been trying not to miss. A businessman in a gray suit had paused his phone call. A mother with a stroller had turned to watch. Even the gate agent at the nearby desk had looked up from her screen. None of them knew each other. They came from different cities, different faiths, different lives. But in that moment, they were all watching the same thing, an old woman who knew exactly who she was, exactly what she believed, and was not afraid of any question in the world. David finally found his voice. "Can I ask your name?" he said. "Fatima," she said. "Fatima," he repeated, as if learning a word in a new language. "Would you mind if I shared this? What you just said?" She smiled again, that same unhurried, unworried smile. "I don't mind," she said. "But it isn't my wisdom. It is older than me by 1400 years. I am only repeating what was given to me." What Fatima said that morning in the airport was not new. She was right, it was 1400 years old. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was once asked which deed was most beloved to Allah. He did not say the longest prayer. He did not say the most charitable act. He said, The most beloved deed to Allah is the prayer performed on time. On time. Every time. For a lifetime. And in the Quran, Allah speaks directly to this question, the question of age, of continuation, of why we keep going when the body grows tired and the world grows loud. In Surah Al-Baqarah, He says, and seek help through patience and prayer. Indeed, Allah is with the patient. Not was. Not will be. Is. Present tense. Always. There is also a hadith that Fatima had carried with her since she was a young woman. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, the first thing a person will be asked about on the Day of Judgment is prayer. If it is sound, all his deeds will be sound. If it is corrupt, all his deeds will be corrupt. For Fatima, these were not abstract theological statements. They were the architecture of her life. Every morning before the city woke up. Every midday pause in whatever she was doing. Every sunset that she met on her knees. Every night before she closed her eyes. And the voluntary prayers in between, like the one David had witnessed, the extra conversations she initiated, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. This is what David could not have known when he walked across that terminal with his microphone and his question. He thought he was approaching a habit. He found, instead, a relationship. David published the video that evening. He almost didn't. He sat in his car in the airport parking structure for 20 minutes, watching the footage back on his phone, trying to decide how to frame it. He had intended it to be a piece about religion in public spaces. Perhaps slightly provocative. The kind of content that generates debate in the comments section. But watching it back, watching Fatima's face, hearing her words in the quiet of his car, he realized he didn't want to frame it at all. He just posted it. No commentary. No headline designed to provoke. Just Fatima. By midnight, it had 400,000 views. By the next morning, it had crossed 2 million. The comments were not what he expected. He had prepared himself for division, for the arguments, the hostility, the political noise that usually accompanies anything involving faith in a public space. Instead, he found something else entirely. A woman wrote, I am not Muslim. I am not religious at all. But I watched this 6 times and I cried every time. She said what I have been looking for without knowing I was looking. A man wrote, I am 71 years old. I stopped praying 20 years ago. After watching this, I unrolled my prayer rug for the first time since 2004. My hand still remembered what to do. A young woman wrote, I showed this to my grandmother. She watched it without speaking. Then she held my hand and said, this woman understands. This is exactly it. David read every comment. He told this story in a later interview. I went to her with a question I thought was challenging. She turned it into a mirror. And when I looked in that mirror, I didn't see her faith. I saw the absence of mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that absence as a loss. Fatima did not know the video had gone viral. She was on a plane when it happened. She landed, turned on her phone, and found 67 missed calls and a message from her daughter, Mama. You are everywhere. She watched the video once, sitting in the arrivals hall, her carry-on bag at her feet, her reading glasses on. When it finished, she put her phone in her bag, picked up her bag, and walked toward the exit. Her daughter met her outside. Mama, are you not amazed? 2 million people watched you. The comments, Mama, people are saying you changed their lives. Fatima thought about this for a moment as they walked toward the car. Then she said, I didn't change anything. I just answered a question honestly. Allah changes lives. I am only a woman who was trying to catch her flight. Her daughter laughed. But then Fatima stopped walking. She turned to her daughter and said something that her daughter later shared online, and which became, perhaps, even more shared than the video itself. Listen. Every person watching that video, whether they are Muslim or not, whether they pray or not, they recognized something. You know why? Because the human soul was created for this. It was created to bow. It was created to be in conversation with its creator. And when we see someone doing exactly what the soul was made to do, we feel it. Even if we have forgotten the language. Even if we have never learned it. Something inside recognizes it. That is not my power. That is the fitra, the nature that Allah placed inside every human being before they were born. I did nothing. I simply did not hide what I was made to do. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. Now, she said, take me home. I need to pray ASR. 2 weeks after that morning in the airport, David published a follow-up piece. In it, he wrote something that surprised his regular readers. I have been a journalist for 14 years. I have interviewed people who changed laws, people who built companies, people who survived the unsurvivable. But I have never met anyone who answered a question the way Fatima answered mine. She didn't defend her faith. She didn't argue for it. She simply described it, the way you describe a person you love to someone who has never met them. And I left that conversation feeling, for the first time in a very long time, that I was missing someone I had never been introduced to. Fatima read this. She printed it out, she prefers paper, and she kept it. Not because it was about her. But because she felt it was a dua. An unintentional prayer from a man who didn't yet know he was praying. She still travels alone. She still carries her small green prayer rug in her carry-on bag. She still prays in airports, in parks, in the quiet corners of shopping centers when the time comes. She does not wait for a perfect place. She does not wait for permission. She does not wait for a moment when no one is watching. Because for Fatima, every prayer is a conversation she has been looking forward to all day. And she has never once, not in 67 years, wanted to miss it. If this story moved something in you today, whether you are Muslim or not, then perhaps that movement is worth paying attention to. Perhaps that is the fitra. The recognition. The thing inside you that knows, even when you have forgotten. May Allah grant us all the gift of prayer that feels like coming home. And may He keep us, all of us, close to Him, in our youth, in our age, and in every moment in between. Ameen. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs it today. Not for the views. For them. Because somewhere, right now, someone needs to hear exactly what Fatima said in that airport. And maybe you are the one meant to send it to them.